So, there's a number of questions. One from Anna is a rather long question that refers back to Paul's letter to the Thessalonians. And she's mentioning that there are people currently around the planet who will be sending a specific notice of liability to men and women, coercing us with their agendas without disclosure. Now, I have no idea what she's actually talking about there. Maybe it's people who forcibly injected them or transgressed their boundaries in some other way. I'm not sure. Because, this could apply to so many situations and government officials, etc. This notice addresses many jurisdictions. Notably, it uses the Bible as a reference. So I assume there's some movement going on about this. Given that this is the law used by the system currently operating, I'm not sure if that's the case. The Bible is rarely taken as a reference any longer by the secular systems of government. So the question is, if we send this notice with the most peaceful and honorable intention to claim that we do not consent with their agenda, what are the implications at the spiritual level? Thank you. Okay. Well, first of all, at the chronos level, I don't think it will have any effect. That's already set. But at the kairos level, it will have implications for everyone who participates in it, because you're shifting your relationship to the other. But more than giving them a notice of liability, I think it would be important to internalize your having given your sovereignty over to the other in the first place, and cut the cord that created the permission to be abused, and return to the level of intelligence that cannot be exploited or mistreated. But if it's done at that external level, it may also have a spiritual effect at the internal level. So that would be my reply to that. Now, the second question is from a woman named Natasha, who asks, what is the good purpose of ego? Ego has many wonderful purposes to it. It's kind of like giving a child a Lego set, or some other educational toy. Because what the ego is a microcosm, fractal construct that shares the same basic structure as the universe, and as any part thereof, or any other ego. So if you can deconstruct your own ego, you will be able to then understand anyone, and be able to understand vertically all of the dynamics that are operating in the spectrum of consciousness. So the ego is very useful, and it's a necessary tool to get out of Kali Yuga. It's also what brought us into Kali Yuga, but that's part of the Christ-Antichrist duality. The next question is, are you referring to physical death and rebirth or spiritual death and rebirth? I'm not sure at what point this was asked and about what. I don't know, maybe you... What's that? Oh, but I said a lot of things last night, so... But in any case, it's both, but ultimately the two are not different. Because, of course, consciousness never dies. And so what physical death is simply the death of the gross vehicle of the ego. The subtle vehicle often remains and does not die at the same time that the physical body does. This is why you have near-death experiences. Even while the body is clinically dead, the consciousness in its subtle body is able to enter into different levels of consciousness and dimensions. But primarily, I suppose, we have to say we're dealing with the death of consciousness at a lower level and its rebirth at a higher level. Next one, any advice for those undergoing Kundalini Awakening? It's been rather confusing. Well, I don't have enough information to answer that one, because it depends on where you are in the Kundalini spiral, what might be the confusing element. But I would say the general answer is stay in a state of rest and observing in pure awareness what is happening, and recognize that this is all information that is giving you an understanding of the forces that operate within any level of the spectral field of consciousness. And then things will be revealed. If you stay silent, contemplating the issue that you're facing, what you're confused about, it will reveal and unknot itself, and then you'll go on to the next one. Okay, so I was raised Christian. What about the rapture? The rapture, yes, it's the meeting point of revelation and redemption. Okay, because the two are ultimately one, and that moment is bliss. It's the return to Satchidananda, the return to the bliss of our being. So it's a rapturous ascension to the highest level of consciousness. Has nothing to do with a materialized version of your body going up into space, but it does refer to going beyond space. Okay, the next is, how does one release the attachment to ego? Well, the same way that if you're married to a guy and you want to divorce him, how do you do it? You know, you lose your attachment, you lose your interest, you become incompatible. And as soon as you realize that you and your ego are incompatible, you can't be a couple anymore. And once you do that, you detach from it, and you say, you know what, my soul is a much better couple. I will conjugate with the soul. And then you'll conjugate with the Holy Spirit, you know. So you'll keep getting better and better mates if you don't give up on who you are. Okay, how do you understand synchronicities? I mean more philosophically, like a glimpse into the mind of God, collective consciousness, etc. Well, the whole world is an ongoing set of synchronicities. You know, it's just that you'll perceive more of them at each assemblage point. But that's all that the world is, because it's the intersubjective field in which all of our dreams are entering into a unified consciousness, and the various powers and ratios and relationships of forces that are emanated from each node of consciousness is creating the scenario that produces the karmodynamics, if you will, of the unfoldment of your life. And so synchronicity is meaning that which happens at the same time that is not caused, not that anything is really caused by anything else, but that it cannot be definably limited to a particular prior event or a prior state. And so synchronicity is the constant eruption of self-arising wisdom. Could you speak more on the Antichrist figure? Not really, because it's not a figure so much. I see this as a principle, a power that is actually the shadow of the divine light. And we are now in the time of shadows, and they are the demonic privation of light that is producing the phenomenon of hungry ghosts in the world. And all of the other various disorders that take over the consciousness. And so it is something that can appear, it does appear at the global planetary level, but at every fractal subset of that, including the ego. Okay. Okay, this is from someone who says, if all is one and one is all, the one self is the dreamer and the one creating the dream, and nothing exists outside of the one self, doesn't that imply that the one self is lonely? No, it doesn't, okay? It doesn't, because the one self is whole, and there's a difference between solitude and aloneness and loneliness. Loneliness comes from lack, and there's no lack in the whole. So there is no there's no lonely God around. However, the other aspect of it is that if God were to get lonely, and let's say God does, if we want to make God into the Father, then the Father creates the Mother, or the Mother at least emerges out of the Father. Some would say the Father emerges out of the Mother. Both are true, because the relationship of masculine and feminine is not a rigid, boundaried understanding of the nature of entities. It is powers that conform to one another, with both the convex and the concave modalities, but in a reciprocal dance. And that's what the conjugation is all about. So that's why you have the. Oh wait, I've got the pen here. In Taoism, the yin and yang, they are the two conjugate, complementary aspects of the one whole. The sphere is the wholeness. So God is one, but God is also always two. And the two then creates the multiplicity. Okay? So it's always Shiva and Shakti. And until the energy of the supreme consciousness withdraws entirely, and there is no universe. And then there is neither Shiva nor Shakti, but it's called Paramashiva, but it's the inconceivable absolute. So, where are we? What happens when questions cease to exist? Well, that should be wonderful. But he says it's a little confusing and gives feelings of anxiousness sometimes. It's only confusing if you are in fact still asking the question of why did questions cease to exist? So it's the refusal to stop asking questions that is the cause of the confusion, not the not asking of questions. Anyway. Okay, how come some people with long meditative and non-dual practice don't see what's really going on in the world, in front of their nose, etc., etc.? Well, first of all, it may be that they were not as at high a level as you thought they were, but in some cases also it's that they have a different role to play. To not be aware of that, because it would then force someone into a different paradigm than they were in, that is an important function that someone has to continue fulfilling, even though it's a function that may compromise one's health or one's safety or one's credibility or one's intelligence, and it may be that those are affected, but they are affected as a result of the position you have in the dream field in terms of the projections on you from the other. This is why it's very dangerous to be a guru or to be in a position of power, political power or a celebrity or any situation in which you're in the limelight and you're going to be projected on by huge numbers of people, and subject then to their dream fields if there is any transitive relationship left and egoic need to be loved, to have applause, to be approved of, to be liked. All of those weaknesses then create an inability to have complete freedom of one's intelligence, because it always rocks the boat. And so if you ever reach a position of power and you don't want to rock that boat, that means you are stagnating. That's not the same as the plane of inertia. It's the plane in which you become a zombie, even if you seem to be a very intelligent zombie. Okay. Could you speak a little more on if the end times are actually nuclear Armageddon or a reset of awakening like we once originally were in the Garden of Eden? It's both, actually. For some, the Armageddon won't happen because they won't be here. They will have left their bodies, and either they'll be functioning as angels in the light to bring the lost souls back to the field of nirvana, or they will be in some other way in a field of consciousness that is not touched by that final act of the drama within the Chronos time, because one's consciousness will have moved into Kairos, so that it may happen, but you're not even aware of it. This is the mark of a Jivan Mukta. You're not aware of it. Even if, as for Ramana, for example, the body suffered cancer, he didn't suffer it. He didn't feel it. There was the consciousness had already, long before that, transitioned through the portal into the nirvanic field, and what happened in samsara was no longer a reality. All that is real is the self. So if one reaches that level of consciousness, indeed, there's no Armageddon. There's simply the redreaming of the Sat Yuga. Okay, how to practice in order to silence the mind and gain access to that center point. Any techniques to reach that neutrality in the plane of inertia? Or is it just the hard work of the trivium and quadrivium? Well, it's both. There's less hard work to the extent that there's more devotion. If you're feeling love for God, that love will magnetically draw you to the Absolute. The less love you're feeling, the more work you've got to do. And then meditation becomes drudgery. But if it's done with love, then it is something that it creates a kind of a trance of joy, of bliss, of ecstasy, and not at all hard work. And if it's done with jnana, that is in equilibrium with the bhakti, then it's the realization that you are already there. And there's no work at all. Every time you sit to meditate, you're in premananda, you're in the bliss of divine love, and there's no one to even be doing any work. So that's what you want, is to maximize that capacity for understanding and for the open-hearted love of the real self that immediately morphs the consciousness into that dimension. All right, the last one, here we are, interesting. We are already in the matriarchy cycle. Why Shunyamurti is not greeting in his prayers goddesses like Goddess Kali, Ganga, Black Madonna? I would love to add that I am representing and incarnating the Goddess Ganga and Black Madonna. Well, wonderful. I'm glad to meet you. First of all, I do address the goddess in every meditation. That's Parashakti. That's the Supreme Goddess. And we're not actually in a matriarchal society now. I'm not sure why you said that. If you mean that the feminine is now dominant over the masculine and the patriarchy has collapsed, yes, that's true at the Chronos level. But the reality is that the goddess is always in charge of the phenomenal plane. Always, not the God, not the father, but the mother. Shakti, it runs the show, not Shiva. Shiva is transcendent. He doesn't even know what's going on, you know. He gave entire power to Shakti to deal with it all and to play with it, you know, to interior decorate the universe, you know, and create all the cosmic melodramas and all the beauty and all the forms of nature and all the various forms of relationality and love and, you know, romance and adventure and all that. That's the goddess. But the face of the goddess that is dominant in each yuga shifts. So in Sat Yuga, it's going to be a Lakshmi kind of goddess of prosperity and abundance and infinite love and joy and beauty. And you get to the other end, and it's Kali and Durga and Chandi and the warrior goddesses and the goddesses of destruction. And in between, you have the goddesses of the increase and the gradual decrease of culture. So Saraswati and then the Ganga and the Black Madonna, and those types of goddess are gradual morphings of the one goddess. There aren't many goddesses. There's one goddess who appears in infinite number of ways. But you could say that the dominant goddess archetype that dominates the entire cycle of time is Sophia. She's the first archon who is operative and effective at controlling the demiurgos and sustaining with wisdom the unfoldment of the cosmic drama. So, you know, all hail Sophia, but all the forms of the goddess, because it is that feminine energy that the goddess is always manifesting as the ruling power. Even when it seems like there's a patriarchy in charge. The patriarchy only got established because the goddess decided that the males were acting in a way that of worthy knights, in which they deserved to run the kingdom, so she didn't have to get her hands dirty. You know, the goddess doesn't want to have to become a war chief, really, on the physical plane level, and have to you know, deal with corrupt governments and be a prosecutor and do all of those kshatriya kind of activities. The goddess wants to stay in bliss and joy and love. And so the queen lets the king do the dirty work, but she's the one who maintains the palace and you know, the beauty of the kingdom. And she's the power next to the throne and on the throne, not even behind the throne. So and she's above the throne because she is the one who chose which soul would become the king and which would be the courtiers and knights, etc. So it's always that feminine power. It's not just at some final moment or in some matriarchal culture that power is the dominant principle. Okay, I think I answered them all.